Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 40k Fireside podcast. I'm David Gaylord, and I'm joined by my good friend Vic Vijay. Together, we discuss 40k and the meta from our perspective, along with events we've recently been to and those that have got coming up. So come on down to the fireside and listen. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the 40k Fireside. I'm David Gaylord, and I'm joined by the now two-time Super Major winner Vic Vijay, joining the illustrious club of myself and I don't know who else.
Innes
Innes as well, the Innes Wilson. But as I've just implied, Vic absolutely crushed and took down the Leicester Super Major 7-rounder, 235 players, I want to say, over the weekend. Both of us had an absolutely fantastic time. Vic more than myself, of course. But we both went technically undefeated, I presume, in the event.
Yeah, Dave, you also went completely undefeated. Both of us did at this event, so we both had a great event, both in terms of the actual Warhammer that we played, but also I think the event was incredible. So
it was a really good time, really good vibes. It was a nice follow through from Coventry in a lot of ways, I think, because we had such a great time there as well, from the atmosphere and all the players there and all the great games. Absolutely no drama again on this weekend, which for that brings it to, I think, 15 games straight, which is really good for the UKTC scene as well. So it's just fantastic. So today, of course, we're going to be covering off our lists, and we're going to be talking first about our pre-cut games, so games 1 to 5 for the both of us, and then we'll do a deep dive focus on Vic's two final games, both which are really cool. So let's get crack into it. Vic, how were you? What were your thoughts going into the tournament?
We discussed it in depth in our previous episode, if anyone wants to check that out. But really, I kind of went in with very little expectations. I was very busy on the run up to the event. I had to do a little bit of hobby to get the demons part of the list made up, and I just knew I wasn't going in with very much practice. And I was kind of trying to, my practice was you playing games and me trying to take information out of you to work out how to use this army properly.
So does that mean I get a little bit of the victory as well?
Definitely. And the thing is, like me watching you play in your practice games, just a couple of them, really helped me understand what the more optimal ways of playing this list are. And it's one of those ones where it's not absolutely obvious immediately the best way to play this army, and I got to give you credit for your diligence and your hard work before the event started. What about you, Dave? How was your pre-game run-up?
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting one because I got basically my entire army on Tuesday, unpainted, boxed. So I basically painted my entire army from Tuesday to Friday, and I was painting it and gold trimming it on Friday night in the Airbnb with the team. So yeah, it was definitely interesting, and I was playing a few games in there as well because you got to take a break from painting at some point, don't you? But
sure.
It was definitely stressful, but kind of fun, stressful going into it as well. But I think we both knew that we were going to have so much fun playing this army because from what we'd already played beforehand, we knew that it was just such a intricate army that kind of rewarded high player skill. So yeah, I was really really stoked going into the tournament. And more so than that, we had 7 people from our team come up, which is basically all of the active members. So that was awesome. We had 6 people in the Airbnb. We rented out a big one in Leicester, and so it was great vibes. It was actually my birthday over the weekend on Saturday, so we booked a 10-person restaurant, and just what more do you want in a weekend, right? You got Warhammer 40k with some of your best mates. You've got dinner out on Saturday night. You got some drinks. You're winning tournaments. Or you're going undefeated. What more do you want from an event, right?
Yeah, absolutely fantastic event. And I'd say this is probably my favorite Warhammer tournament that I've ever been to. Just every single thing about it was great. And we'll go on to talking about all of our games in a bit, but every single person I played at this tournament was so nice and so lovely. It was really a joy all the way through, and I left feeling so kind of fresh and happy. So Dave, you did mention gold trim. For people who haven't listened to the last episode, aren't following what we're kind of running, we were running the Thousand Suns and a detachment of Flamers. So Thousand Suns and Flamers, which we both feel is probably one of the stronger, if not the strongest army in the game.
Yep.
And Dave, I don't know if you want to do a quick rundown just of the kind of list that we both ran.
Yeah, so Vic and I's lists were really similar. The only difference was, and I'll get to it in a second here, was that I had a Rhino and Vic basically had an upgraded Change Caster to a Fate Skimmer. But aside from that, you've got an Exalted Sorcerer who is basically a Mortal Wound bomb. He can cast up to 4 spells reliably, and he can learn other spells, so he does a metric ton of damage. And you've got Araman, who kind of has your 2 buff spells and a damage spell, and he's super reliable and fast. Then you've got Infernal Master, which has your packs. Then we both had 6 squads of Rubric Marines. I was playing full Soul Reapers, and you were playing 4 or 5 Soul Reapers.
4, yeah.
4 Soul Reapers. There you go. And then we both played 14 Flamers in different configurations. You played 5-5-4, and then I played 6-5-3, and then we also had 10 Terminators, of course. And then where I had the Change Caster and the Rhino, you had the Fate Skimmer. And so the Fate Skimmer is kind of a better caster, gets +1 to cast, a bigger base, and he's got some melee as well. Where I was just playing the Change Caster, who's a small little 32mm base guy who just walks around on foot as well.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had very, very similar spells and etc. Yep. Little differences on the spells, but essentially the same kind of rough outline of everything.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And our list basically there were some minor differences, and I think chalk and cheese. It's difficult it's difficult that neither of us took a loss because we couldn't really point to where the list didn't perform in some ways, right? Mm-hmm. So, and we'll never actually fully know because Flamers will probably get nerfed for the next tournament. We'll never fully know whose list was better.
For sure.
But so that's the list that we took, guys. Like I said, Vic and I both felt it was a list that was fun to play because it was different from what we normally played. But it was also a list that really rewarded player skill. And of course it was strong, and we were playing Flamers, of course, but Flamers, believe it or not, are not the be-all end-all of the list. I think we both definitely came to that conclusion. They're definitely strong and they're too tanky for their points, but the real strength of the list is how flexible it is and its ability to zig and zag in situations where your opponent presents problems. If they're going really fast or they're playing really aggressive, you can actually redeploy a lot of your army on one turn. You've got 2 teleports and 1 movement spell to do so, and you can move block as well. And then you can mortal wound and actually apply pressures on other sides of the board. So it really is very dynamic, and it's always fun to play an army like that, right?
Yeah, 100%. So such an army that expresses player skill very well. Mm-hmm. And I think you can lose with this army if you don't play it well. But you'll win most, if not all, of your games if you play it correctly for the situation, and it gives you all the tools to do that. So that's what we like.
There's a big asterisk next to correctly as well, because correctly to play this army 100% optimally is extremely difficult. I certainly don't think I played any game 100% optimally as well. There was a ton of room for improvements in a lot of my games. Minor things. And sometimes big things, but we'll get to that when I talk about some games.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think say in all of my first 5 games, the pre-cut games, I definitely kept seeing, if only I'd moved this here, if only I'd cast this spell in this order, would have made a difference, even though it didn't affect the outcome. Because there's just so many different choices you need to do. Yep. But by the last 2 games, I got it down. I got it down. Those were perfect games. They were as good as I could see it.
The apex of 40k, right there. So let's jump into the games. Funnily enough, we had 2 very different runs for the tournament, I think. And Vic and I are experienced enough tournament players to know that sometimes in a tournament you get a bit of a harder run. Sometimes you get a bit of an easier run, and that's just the nature of tournaments, guys. And to refresh the tournament structure, it's 235 players. You play 5 rounds, and then the top 4 victory point players go to a cut. So then it goes to top 4 playing, and then top 2 playing. So a total of 7 rounds, and so that roughly left, I think, about 8 undefeated players. After the 5th round. So this is a tournament structure where it's important to score a lot of victory points as well. And so what I think can happen and what does happen, and I've been on the receiving end of this in a positive way in a lot of ways in the 2 super majors I won, is that in the top cut I I managed to score very highly and get into the top cut. Whereas the games that I had this weekend, I had a string of really tough games, and actually I wasn't able to score enough points. I think I came 8th in the tournament overall on points in the 5-0 bracket. I wasn't scoring enough points to get to that top cut. So that's I think that's definitely the two different tracks that we had, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think you had a much tougher run than me, and I was, in a way, very lucky through my run that I got the kind of matchups, so particularly faction matchups, even if there were some decent players in there, some faction matchups that really worked in my favor. And to put that into context, my first 4 games were pretty much over by turn 2, with 2 of them pretty much over by turn 1.
Yep.
So I had multiple rounds where I finished within an hour and I was walking around for 2 hours. And there was one game where I was finished underneath 30 minutes as well. So, whereas Dave, not quite so much.
Yeah, let's kick it off. So the pairings get drawn on Thursday night, and I've got none other than Blood Angels on round 1, Dawn of War.
Ouch.
So this, if you guys know, is the army that Manny Chima lost to in America, and is kind of known as a little bit of a good matchup for Blood Angels, right? Particularly because they're all damage 2 minimum. They have no psychers, and they have quite good secondaries. So they can take Abhor the Witch and 2 other very good faction secondaries, and then they can pre-game move. Well, on this mission they couldn't, which was my lucky part. But they can move and move quickly, and then if they connect into things, then they basically kill whatever they touch, even if it's Terminators as well. So my opponent had like another meta Blood Angels list. Thankfully, I went first in that mission as well, because that meant that he couldn't castle up his entire army into the middle L. So I managed to get a win out of that one. I think I got maybe, we're going to look it up here. That's the production quality we've got these days. I managed to get an 85-point win on that one.
That's
So that's good. You would think that's good, but honestly, in a tournament this stacked, an 85-point win is actually on the lower side if you want to try and make the cut to top 4, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a relatively small win here. And actually, with Thousand Suns as well, that is a relatively small win. It is an army that can score highly. So you obviously were under some pressure throughout this game, but probably on the primary or something.
I just couldn't play too aggressively, otherwise he was going to get me in trouble. And then round 2. What am I up against round 2? I'm up against none other than a direct copy of your list, Vic, more or less, Emperor's Children. So I've got Emperor's Children on Data Scry Salvage, hold 2, I believe. And by a guy named Lee Churchwood, who really nice guy, man. We had a great game.
It was lovely.
Like a straight up meta list. I went first. This is a great game. I went first this game, unfortunately, as well. And I positioned a Rubik squad in the medium L on the ruin and one of the middle objectives, because I knew that he wanted to. Of course, as Emperor's Children, you want to move your Terminators into a centralized threatening position on turn 1, if not get a turn 1 charge. So I was like, look, if he goes for a charge on his Terminators and my Rubik Marines, at least I get a crackback with my entire army into his Terminators. So Lee gets all of the buffs off on the Terminators, 6-inch auto advance, and then 6-inch subbed in charge, makes the charge, kills all my Rubik Marines. But, and this is the power of the army, guys, I think I'd killed 8.5 Terminators just in the psychic phase. through a 5-up, feel no pain. So he had 7.5. I think he had 2.5 Terminators left. So that's 21. That's like 22 mortals through 5-up, feel no pain. The game was going quite well after that. I managed to clear up. Basically, I killed his entire Terminator brick and a Noise Marine brick, and then it was up to him how to play after that. And he played really well. He decided to start to play really cagey, which was definitely the correct move. And that actually meant that I couldn't really sit on many of the objectives or score as highly as I would have liked as well. And then he also has the 4-up to 9 Abaddon against the Psychic secondaries as well. So I only managed to get 77 points that game. And 77 points, if 85 is not good, then 77 is definitely not good as well.
You can't make the cut if you take a small win like that.
Yeah. Just to put it in perspective, guys, some people had dropped 25 points over 5 games total. So I'd already dropped 23 in one game. And, I've been there where I dropped at LVO, I think I dropped like 9 points over 6 games or something. Or it was something ridiculous, like 15 points over 6 games or something like that. And that's just how it be sometimes. But Round 3.
Oh, wait. Before you do because your round 3, 4, and 5 are all like extremely interesting tight games.
Okay, you go through. You go through your
I'm
5.
gonna smash through all of my pre-cut games here
Go for it.
because I can bunch them up quite nicely. So my round 1 and my round 2 were both Imperial Knights players. The first one was Will Nelson, and the second was George from our team. Now, both of them had a free blade lance, which is kind of you can mix and match your traits on your knights, and the main thing is that you kind of give out multiple 4-up invulns and -1 damage buffs to your knights. Now, Will had one extra tech piece. He basically had the Knight Chaplain in his list, and the Knight Chaplain can cast, I think, 3 litanies or something. And one of the key litanies in there is a 9-inch aura of 5-up Feel No Pain against mortal wounds.
Damn, that's
So
pretty good.
I know, right? So that game was dragged out a little bit because it was actually a bit tough to chew through. They go off on a 2+, and I waited until the turn he missed that 5-up Field of Pain, and just went in really hard. George, on the other hand, doesn't have access to that. George kind of went into the game thinking, right, I'm going to lose this game, but my win condition is if I deploy everything on the front line and I get first turn, I'm just going to go and take board presence and try and kind of pressure Vic out.
Screwed you out the game.
Because George's thing is that he knows that as a player, I'm very good in a passive slow game. Towards the end of the game, I can grind people out of points because I'm quite good at counting points. So George was like, let's make it aggressive so that Vic doesn't play the kind of playstyle he likes. Unfortunately, George went second. He lost almost 5 knights. He definitely lost 4. And he was move blocked in his deployment zone, and he wasn't able to kind of play out from there. So he actually conceded on turn 1.
Yeah, and by the way, you double Infernal Gateway'd him,
Yeah.
which hit like 5 knights, and then his knights also exploded or something, right?
Yeah, his knight exploded, and then I had a full round of shooting into whatever was left in that corner. So basically, an entire flank disappeared.
So it's pretty hard to win the game when you get triple Infernal Gateway.
Yeah, it doesn't work out very well. So George just laughed that one off, and we moved on. My round 3 was against William Reed with Death Guard, and Death Guard have a really tough time against this list. The mortal wounds go straight through their protection with their -1 damage. Will was so nice. Like, I got a little bit lost in the morning on the way to the tournament, and he kind of helped me find a little shortcut to get to the venue. And, you know, he introduced himself before I even met him for the game and stuff. And he was just a joy to play against as my round 3 on day 1. And then we moved on to playing Chris. Now, Chris is #1 Space Wolf player in the world. Yep. Unfortunately, Space Wolves don't have a great game in this one. Chris had practiced this because one of his teammates on the Savvy Submariners, Kev, was playing Thousand Suns and Flamers list, and he'd been able to get a bit of practice in, and he'd won the practice game. But in the actual game we played, essentially, if I just focus on secondaries, I'll hold back and just play 8 on the primary. It's impossible for him to win no matter what he does, because 2 of his secondaries require interaction with me. Yep. He has a librarian as well, a single librarian. It's just a disaster against Thousand Suns, because there's a Thousand Suns secondary, Wrath of Magnus, where you essentially have to cast more of 3 different categories of spells than your opponent if they have a Psyker in their army, and it's just an auto 15 almost if they have 1 Psyker in their army.
Exactly.
Chris conceded that after a couple of turns, and we just kind of played it out as if there was a passive game. And then, I moved on to my round 5, which was actually an extremely eye-opening game for me. This game was against Nathan Roberts. I've played Nathan multiple times now, but at this tournament, he was playing a pure demons list. And he'd gone for a list where he had no big demons. He only had 2 demon princes and then loads of small stuff everywhere.
He only had 1 weapon type, basically, right?
Well, interestingly, he had 3 Exalted Flames and 3 Burning Chariots in the list.
Let's go, baby.
Which, surprisingly, is a very good profile into Tsons at -4 AP and 2 damage. Yeah. It's actually a really good list. But the big thing, this was a bad matchup for Nathan. He went insane.
18 flamers. That's why I was making the joke.
He had 8. Oh, right. I get it. Yeah.
All the flamers you can get.
Nathan knew this was a bad matchup for him. It's an uphill game for him. But just the amount of kind of sloppy mistakes and poor play that I made in this game this is one of the worst games of 40k I've ever played. I picked the wrong secondaries. I never do that. I picked the wrong secondaries, and I like moved in such a way where I didn't really keep my enough stuff in cover. I wasn't planning a turn ahead. I was just tired and just didn't really feel like playing. But then he stopped me every now and then and said, "Look, Vic, are you sure you don't want to do this? Do X, Y, Z? Are you sure that, you didn't mean to sequence it in this order?" And he was just so nice to me through this game. And like, it gave me so much focus going into my last 2 rounds, because I was like, there's no reason why I need to play like this. I know the stuff Nathan's telling me here, and I can play like really well.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate Nathan. He's a top guy, and he's kind of involved with Team England and everything. And so thanks for the game,
Picked the wrong
Nathan.
secondaries and then scored 100 points, right?
Picked the wrong secondaries, yeah. As in, I picked secondaries which I should have picked easier ones.
Yeah.
They're all 100 score. They're like maximum scoring secondaries, but I could have done it in a much more kind of elegant way.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah. I was just joking. That
It's like
and then scored 100 points.
He has like 9 characters, and I didn't pick Psychic Interrogation. And I had to stretch to try and get Mutate in this game. Right, stuff like that.
Assassinate, Mental Interrogation, the classic non-combo.
Yeah, that's it, man.
So then basically after that, top cut, right?
Top cut. So we can bounce back to you, because you had some epic games.
Twice, man. Yeah, I think probably. I mean, was this the most? I don't know if my next round was the most dramatic table of the tournament. There was a lot of people watching that game.
Gosh, everyone wanted to know what was going on.
Go away for a bit now.
Yeah.
So not my arch nemesis, Marcus. I played Marcus Hinson round 3, who I played at Coventry round 1, and then I lost to /1 by 2 points or 8 points because I had the 10-point VP deduction. Now Marcus is a lovely guy, man, but he's also quite good at 40k, and he definitely knows his list very well. Definitely loves a few beers or 2 as well. He's a really nice guy, man. Type of game where you're like, oh, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? It's it's the exact type of games of 40k that you want to play, and so, man, this game was this list is, I'm telling you, this list is not bad, man. This list is the House Raven list, 2 big knights, and 6 little ones, and then he's got the he's got the 4 bonds which give him Ballistic Skill 2, and then his whole army counts as stationary after advancing and shooting, and they're all Quista Mechanicus, so he all has access to the 5-up Fiona Pain strat against mortal wounds, which is obviously great. But mate, there's one knight, and this knight ruined me the last game as well. It's the one where you can spam calculated targeting on, and this is what he does as well. Spams calculated targeting, which, guys, if you don't know, if on a 6 to wound, converts the damage that would have been done straight into mortals. Like for every weapon you shoot from the knight, not just pick one weapon, but every weapon you shoot. For 3 CP, sounds like a lot of CP, but they get 3 between every 2 turns, because they get 2, and then they get 1. And then they can even get 1 from renewed those. But yeah, I did not play this game well. I played aggressively with my Terminators, turn 1, which was a mistake. I should have waited to turn 2. And then after that, I just had a difficult time calculating my damage outputs, and then had too much redundancy left over as well. And then, his big knight on his turn 1 cracked back and popped off, lost all my Terminators, fully buffed. He just, man, the Reaper Chain Cannon, it's like the Relic Gatling Cannon or something like that, does 12 plus D6 more, wounds, shots. And, like, he cracked off rolls like, 4 6s or something like that to wound, and I take, like, 10 mortals. I'm like, great. Or, like, 12 or something like that. Man, it was a really rough game. He's also got the Warlord trait on 6s to wound, deal a mortal, so it stacks with the calculated targeting really well. But anyway, so the game goes on. Marcus is like, oh, I think you got in the bag. It's right, fine. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, mate, I'm pretty sure I'm like losing by like a point or 2. Gets to turn 4. I'm doing everything I can. Even so at turn 4 and 5, quite a lot of people looking around because I'm apparently quite stressed.
You're red.
I was determined not to lose this game.
There's a vein showing on your forehead here because you're concentrating so much.
Because what happened last time is what happened in our previous game is I think I didn't calculate the points, and then I could have won if I'd played better in that last point. So I was determined not to make that same mistake again, So I was adding the points up and analyzing the board position, thinking, and then like, okay, if he kills this and this, you'll be at this many points, etc., etc. So we map everything out. I go, okay, this is our best way. Like, this is the great game you want. Like, you want to be able to talk with your opponent, be like, what's the best way for me to score points? Blah blah blah. What's the best way for you? And etc. etc. So we do that, and it turns out I'm winning by like 3 points or something, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna do this, and then we play the turn, and then we score everything up, and it's like, okay, it's a 3 point win, and then I had made a mistake. Which actually gave him 2 extra points. And I was like, because we'd already shook hands. I was like, okay, 3 point win. I was like, man, that was close. And then he was like, oh, actually, this and this. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. Like, what does that set the score at? Oh, it sets it to 1 point win. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, damn, fuck me, that's close. And then he goes, well, actually, there was a way I could win if I move my armature and then shoot your Rubik Marines, and then I'll get 2 points for a pour, which would be a win for me. And I was like, all right, let's do it then. So one armature with calculated targeting to kill my Rubik Marines to secure the win for Marcus. And then I was just tense. Like, that's fair, man. Like, let's roll it. And luckily my Rubiks lived. And that was the 1 point victory. But yeah, that was really tense. A lot of people around the table. Obviously, I was stressed out. I kind of wanted to get the win after being beaten by Marcus. So shout out to you, Marcus. It was a great game as always.
Absolutely, man. Well done. And if you had not like thrown the Terminators away turn 1, does that completely change the game?
Completely changes the whole game. And you know what I did as well? I should have taken Warp Ritual, which meant I could have just played passively and scored, and then turn 1 would have been a complete free roll for me, score points, blah blah blah. Turn 2, I could have Warp Ritual again for free with my character, and then with all my Flamers come down and the Terminators, and actually just like all my characters in position. And then just like absolutely hit him super hard at once, which would have probably been 3 nights down, but I wouldn't have taken any losses for it. So it would have been a lot better.
Well, you made it through this one, and then that's the end. We celebrated your birthday. We got the pairings in.
Yeah.
And you played against one of the nicest guys in competitive 40k.
Well, none other than Mr. Stephen Box. So I don't know how much shit was given to me at dinner, saying if I lose this game. Steven's list is actually. I told him as well. I was pretty worried, man. We were playing Tighter Conviction, Dawn of War, and he was playing Eldar, Sanham.
Samhan, yeah, they're the red jet bike guys.
Yeah. And so his list was like 15 Shining Spears, which we all know is not the most competitive list. But then 2 lots of Striking Scorpions, 2 lots of Howling Banshees. The big Phoenix Lord.
Yes, thing. Yeah. He had 2 Phoenix Lords, so he had Baharoth and Jainzar, so the Howling Banshee, and
then he had the huge monster one.
Yeah,
as
he
well.
had Avatar.
That's one.
He had the same hand Autark is really good, so he had him as well on the jet bike.
So Vic and I were both talking about, and we talked about it a lot. I'm sure Vic knew that I knew that. I'm at risk of just getting like completely shut off the board on Alpha Strike if he goes first. Has Shining Spears that can auto advance 22, and then auto charge with like the charge rolls, and then Striking Scorpions on the table as well. That it start 9 inches away from my army, because every unit in his army can actually kill a unit of mine, like relatively consistently. So actually, if he pins me in on the board and then has a turn 2 follow up, I can't get out of my deployment zone. I'm taking big losses at the same time, and he has good secondaries against me because he doesn't have a Psycho, so he could take Abhor the Witch and no prisoners as well. So yeah, this was definitely not a sure and win. And look, honestly, luckily I went first, and that kind of gave me enough space to breathe. Whereas because my Flamers were going to come in after he had only had 1 turn of movement as well, so I had that instantaneous counter pressure to whatever he did. He seized the opportunity. I put the Rhino out a little bit on the objective and some rubrics. He seized the opportunity, went all in. Managed to get into my Terminators, rubrics, and the Rhino, but fortunately enough, he didn't kill enough Terminators, and then I had a big crackback to clean up everything there. It still could have turned a little bit if his what's the character called again? The lady character?
Jainzar.
If she had gotten back up on the 4-up, but he rolled a 3, unfortunately. So
Oh,
we were both looking at that dice low, like, oh man, if she gets back up, because I could have countercharged her, but she can make a unit fight last as well. So that, and if I didn't kill her, she could have dealt a lot more damage to my army as well. So it was, definitely wasn't guaranteed. But yeah, no, it was a great game. Unfortunately, I had enough damage to squeeze him out of the board and enough movability to squeeze the board once he had committed a lot of his resources there initially.
yeah. And I have to take back my comment from the previous episode that I thought Steve might struggle his way through this tournament. Steve did actually go 4-1. He only
4-1.
took that loss against you there. So,
Yep.
well played, Steve.
There we go. Yeah, so that was a great game. And then, so that's round 4. I think I dropped points. I mean, I know. Oh, actually, that was my best scoring game, I think.
97.
I think I got 97 there, yeah. And then, so that's round 4. And then, round 5, I get Nathan on Kraken Nids, who is, yes, really nice guy. And he's playing like a meta Kraken list. And I actually played him in the semi-finals of the Birmingham Super Major, first Super Major. And he's a really solid player, man. So this is not exactly the matchup you want, because historically speaking, Kraken is the worst matchup for Thousand Suns as well. So yeah, it's rough too.
This is a tough one.
The only saving grace I had is he didn't run 2 Harpies. He was playing a second Hive Tyrant and some other stuff, which turned out to be the biggest strength for me. The biggest strength for me was that I actually played against Jokul Johansson from Team Iceland on Kraken Nids as well, probably about a week before this event. So there was so many, this is so great. Like, this is why I practice, because there were so many things in that game where I was literally asking myself in my head, I was like, David, what was the things like, okay, during deployment, what did I talk about I needed to do in deployment? I was like, okay, I need to do this. Like, cool. Like, did that, And then I was like, okay, David, when I teleport my Terminators, what did I forget to do last time? I was like, okay, I need to, like, deep strike a unit of Flamers, even if it's 3-man, in front of the Terminators to screen the counter smites. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And it's like, there were so many, like, exact precise things. I was like, okay, this hard fast rule, I always do this. This hard fast rule, I always do that. And that's those are kind of the constructs that I like to establish of how to play matchups in my head in 40k. So yeah, I managed to win that one. The thing about that mission was one where you can move the objectives, and the thing about that one is Tsons, once if you win the roll off, you can move them into your ruin, and you can place banners down for a solid 10 points. And then once I can take Wrath of Magnus, banners, and Warp Ritual, those are actually just 3 secondaries he can't interact with at all. So I can play a completely passive game and get like 90 on a great day, 97 points. Because I get 15 on Wrath of Magnus, I get 10 on banners, and then, not 10, 97, 93 points, sorry. 10 on banners, and then 12 on Warp Ritual. And Warp Ritual, of course, you can move the character in, cast Warp Ritual, undeniable, teleport him out, and then Warp Temporal Surge the unit that teleported him out back off the ruin. So completely uninteractable, they can't do anything about it. So yeah, that game was good. I mean, obviously I know Kraken like the absolute back of my hand, so I knew exactly where to map everything out. I knew exactly how far his units could reach, the damage output, and everything like that. And I just knew where to kind of tackle it. I always knew that I wanted to make the play where I'd sit my Terminators up right on the corner of a board and then look into the open ruin that he had to move into one turn. So he played a little bit too passive and gave me a free turn, which meant that I could come down with my Flamers and my Terminators on that turn, looking into the ruin and just hit him a bit hard. He also whiffed on his Hive Tyrant. His Hive Tyrant did what mine did to Alex at LGT. Completely whiffed into a target that he should have killed, and I know exactly what that feels like.
Amazing.
Yeah, that was the 5 games. I just kind of played like meta Blood Angels, Marcus Ensign on Knights, your old list and Emperor's Children, Stephen Box, and then Kraken Nids on a good player. So
Ouch.
yeah, although we got through it 5-0.
You got through it, man.
While
Well
I was
done.
struggling, you were succeeding in great bouts. So it was off to the cut.
Yes.
Now,
Oh, yeah. Let me do the rankings because that's quite interesting here. So, because there were 8 undefeated players, you came in at 8th place, dropping 60 points with your Thousand Suns and Flamers, and then we had Dan Whittaker, who came in with Harlequins. Dan's an incredibly good player, like very, very good, and he dropped 49 points. And then we had Josh Roberts from Team England, one of the Team England captains, and he dropped 39 points, also with Thousand Suns and Flamers. So, including myself, that was the 3,000 Suns and Flamers list in the top 8.
Yep.
And then there was also one more Harlequins player, Mike Porter, coming in on 5th place. He just missed the cut. We're talking like a couple of points from getting through it.
Yeah.
But instead he was overtaken by Jake Wilstrup, who's on pure Thousand Suns, no Flamers.
30 Terminators.
30 Terminators. And then we also had Nassim, who came third on points, and then myself. Nassim was on Tau, everybody knows that. And then me with the Thousand Sons of Flamers, and then we had Brian Seep, who came in with Orcs. He actually won Leicester last year with Orcs. Yeah, he did. So he's the reigning Leicester Super Major champion, having won it with Orcs last year.
Orc commander,
Orc master.
So I mean, in terms of the top 8, we've got yourself, me, and Josh Roberts on Thousand Sons Flamers, and then everything else was a different army, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, Thousand Sons itself, but that's 30 Terminators. It's a very different list.
Dan and Mike on Harlequins.
Dan and Mike on Harlequins as well. And look, I'm going to get crap for it if I don't do it, but Mike Costello actually finished 4-1. Sorry. So nice. 4-1 came in 10th there as well.
Oh, yeah, he's right up there.
Yeah. So I would say a healthy meta, even albeit one that was people predicted was going to be dominated by a particular broken faction, allegedly. So I would say definitely a good run. Shout out to Brian, of course, going second place with Orcs. But before we get into that, we had a bit of a spicy one because Nassim versus Nassim. Is this the first time you've played Nassim in a tournament?
Yeah, first time. I have never even played a practice game with Nassim.
Never even played a practice game with him.
It feels like we're best friends because I see him and hang out with him every tournament, and we always have a laugh. We played in a team together at the team event a few weeks back. But yeah, Nassim. So this mission was number 6, which has always been in UKTC events, a hammer and anvil mission. So we're playing as far away from each other as possible along the long edge of the board. And in this mission, there's been a change in the terrain since the previous tournament, because I think multiple people, including myself, gave some feedback on this, that the middle ruin was very, very open. So essentially, against armies like Tau, fast armies, even armies like Eldar with swooping hawks, it's really easy to get angles into all of the terrain pieces in your opponent's deployment. So if you go first, you can just wipe people off the board. The change has been made to make that middle L tucked further into deployment and also rotate it, so it's like an arrowhead pointing down the other side of the board, so you can actually functionally use that to hide stuff. This game was really interesting because I found out with about 10 minutes to spare that I was playing against Nassim. And Nassim is brimming with confidence. He's a very confident player. He's played over the course of this tournament about like 3 hours of Warhammer over 5 rounds because he just gets through his games so fast and tries to finish them in the first 2 or 3 turns. So he came into this like, oh yeah, he's like rubbing his hands like he's gonna, just kill me. And I'm there sitting, I've got to work out what my win condition is before this game starts. And I was in peak like energy mode because I just played that game against Nathan and I really wanted to play this game as perfectly as I could strategically. And in my head, I know what happens if, say, the Terminators come out. I know that all 10 Terminators will die, just like that. He can very easily kill 8 Terminators just with a couple of Riptides and a commander, let alone with the rest of the army shooting on top of it. So functionally, I can't play a head-on fight here. The ideal kind of game for me is one where I am hidden on first turn. So I was able to just about set that up here. So I kind of measured out all of his potential threat ranges we had with a redeploy if he went first. I have to accept that the flyers are going to be able to bomb me. If they want to shoot me, they can shoot me, but I want to have important stuff on cover so that, and also with the -1 damage, you can really mitigate just the flyers shooting. If he leaves them on the board instead of just bombing me and leaving the table, I know I'll get the flyers on my turn, which will almost definitely be a trade up. And his Riptides and his 18-inch moving Crisis Suit unit can only go so far that, yes, they'll be able to draw a little bit of an angle, but only with either a few Crisis Suits and certainly not with the Riptides.
And they won't be able to fire and fade back into cover either.
Exactly. So I wanted it to be a position where he has to leave stuff extremely exposed if he wants to use it, and the damage will be suboptimal and my hit back will be much more powerful. So I created this situation in deployment, and my plan through the game was that I wanted to hold 8 primary, and I wanted to try and put NAS down to 4 primary every turn. Now, this is a tricky thing to do. Actually, the putting NAS down to 4 primary is easier to do than trying to keep myself at 8 primary. To keep myself at 8 primary on the Scouring, both objectives are just outside your deployment zone. And I have to hang a model out in the open in order to do that. Nas made a choice early on in his deployment to put his crisis suit on one side. And personally, I haven't even like really discussed it with him because everything was such a blur. But I think he put his crisis suit on the wrong side. He put his crisis suits exactly opposite. The open objective.
It's the hardest angle to get onto your open objective, right?
Yeah, exactly. In order to get an angle onto my open objective, he has to really put himself in the open with that crisis suit unit. And he put his riptides on the other side. So I knew the riptides are the things that are going to be able to shoot onto my open objective. Now, that's still a scary thing. But 2 riptides shooting into a Rubric Marine squad, which have a 4-up invuln. If I keep a CP reroll and my free reroll from the Glimpse of Eternity, I have a very good chance of surviving and holding onto my primary. He can't physically move onto my objective with anything. And then I have a lot of things I can do with kind of temporal surging a Rubric squad and then charging into whatever, like his Riptides, which are near his other objective, to try and nick that from him and keep him on 4s, and also prevent him from raising a banner on his objectives. I also knew he was going to take decisive action, which is 4 points towards the end of the game. If he holds more objectives than me. So he would have to put something onto the middle objective. Now, his army has very little OBSEC. And I know that if I can just wait until the last turn and dump all my Terminators onto that middle objective, I have a chance of making him miss one of his decisive actions and swing me over to a 12. So that's my turn 4 plan, which worked out by 1 Terminator. I had 1 Terminator left on that objective because that's the turn I just put my entire army out in front of him and gave him too much to deal with. So this is an interesting game because Nas is an aggressive player and I like to play passively. And I got first turn. Nas put both of his planes into the sky. And his first thing he said to me, he looked at it after I played my turn. I barely did anything on my turn. He looked at it and he was just like, oh my God, we're going to have to play a passive game against you here. And I was like, yeah, we're going to be playing 3 hours, Nas.
I'll be honest with you, I'm shocked that he put the planes in reserve because that mission is deep deployment as well. And like we talked about too, to shoot the planes, if they're at the back of the board, your whole army's going to have to be exposed. And then he would just crack back with his entire army into whatever shot the planes, which is obviously going to be a trade down.
The thing is, you know what happened here? That I think Nas didn't realize the way I was going to play this game.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And the context of this, guys, is that I played Nassim and beat him playing Thousand Suns. And I think obviously a big difference between the two of us is that I play very aggressive in general, right? Like I feel like that's where I shine. And I played very aggressive against Nassim, went for turn 1 teleport, etc. against him as well. So I think he had that in the back of his head, right?
Yeah, he had that in the back. And he even told me the best way for Thousand Suns to play against me is to play aggressively. So that adds up why he put the planes in reserves. But actually, like just purely on paper, I'm winning this game by more than 15 points. If everything, like, I don't even have to try very hard. That's just what's going to happen. And if he tries to break that cycle and play through it, he's going to end up losing so many resources. So he realized that very quickly. Like, I think he realized that after turn 1 that he was going to lose this game, unless something drastically changed here. And at that point, he kind of like just carried on going through the motions because he had no choice. He can't just suddenly switch up and go aggressive because that doesn't work. You can't rely on like a 5% chance at that point. You have to rely on his Kauyon turns being the ones where the swing happens. So we played out the first 3 turns. And then we went through to turn 4, 5, and I did my whole play of denying him and getting like the 12-point swing on decisive action and getting a 12 on the primary. And then Nas was like, put the clock on me. And Nas like downed a pint and the game just became a laugh from then on in. But yeah.
You know what's funny is like, and on like a very high level is that, I'll just say what I would have done because I think it's definitely an interesting contrast, right? If Nassim put both of his planes in reserve,
Hmm.
I would have played mega aggressive, me personally, because
Yeah.
I would have been like, if he's got two planes in reserve, and that means he's only got a couple of commanders, a suit unit, and two riptides. If I can knock one of those out, put my whole army on the board, like, let's go. But maybe that was wrong, right? Because like obviously, you can map out the passive play and win there as well, right? But do you not think maybe it was correct to? And I'm saying this in hindsight of you winning
Yeah.
the game, of course. Do you not think maybe it's correct to play extremely aggressive on turn two after he sees you play passive? Just say, oh, just play a passive game, I can win. He's going to go, damn, okay, extend a little bit. Turn two, hit him with absolutely everything with the flamers as well, whilst he still has two Sun Sharks only coming down the next turn.
The thing is, he doesn't really have good angles because I'm
Mm.
literally giving him one rubric marine to shoot at
Yeah,
on a good
yeah,
angle. So if he does want to go for me, like really push out and trade, he's trading for a couple of rubric marine squads around the
yeah,
outside.
true. Yeah,
And he's just going to get all the mortal wounds and because the Terminators are completely hidden. There's no point where you can shoot them.
yeah,
The clapback's going to be too much, and Nas is exceptionally good at the game, and he maybe missed my strategy, but
yeah.
he knew what would make him lose the game immediately, and in a way, he's quite clever here because he realized that yes, he's probably losing the game, but he also doesn't want to miss out on a podium position. Because
Yeah.
going really aggressive has a very high chance of a blowout game where he scores like 30 points.
Yeah.
So instead, he ended up like scoring quite a few points on that game. So he's still there was only 6 points in it towards the end.
Right.
Because I just on the last turn we were just having a laugh, so I just put my whole army in and he just killed everything.
Yeah.
So
Sounds like a
yeah,
good game.
yeah, it was a
Master
great game.
practitioner.
It was
There
a
we go.
great game, and
So
it's
next
just
up, so
yeah.
so at this point, Brian beats the Thousand Suns player.
Yep.
30
So Brian
Terminators.
goes through to the final with his orcs,
Mm-hmm.
and Brian's playing a really cool orc list. He's playing Goths, and it's something you can't practice against much, to be honest.
Very difficult to find. Yeah.
Very difficult. He has two of these 16 wound T8 trucks, which only cost like 120 points.
Oh yeah.
And then he has like another truck with some truck boys that can disembark after it's moved. So I'm just like, oh, what's your threat range, Brian? And he's like, oh yeah, the Storm Boys have a maximum theoretical threat range of 30, but they auto advance 6 on a war turn. And then he said, yeah, the truck can move 12 inches. The guys inside can get out, advance, and charge. So that's going, And I'm just like, okay, so I as long as I stay back here and I'm just pointing at like the corner of the board. So in this
You're allowed to
game,
exist right in this 5-inch space, and you're safe.
yeah, in this game, he also has better secondaries than me. So there are multiple very, very strong orc secondaries. So I essentially set up in my head that I'm going to give him 1 or 2 units further forward here. And I'm going to play like quite defensive and back. I'm going to accept that he's going to get extreme primary advantage probably for the first 2 turns. It should be 12-4, 12-4 on the up to turn 3. And then I'm hoping that I can like slowly pick away units all the way around the edge until I can just kill him towards the end of the game and catch up and win by a small amount. It kind of went like that. He ended up getting first turn, which is bad on this mission. We're 18 inches apart. First turn puts like a chunk of stuff in front of me and tucks in all his infantry really deep into terrain, so it's tricky to get to them. And I play on my entire backboard edge with my whole army. It's a one long line. With the Terminators, like a few can shoot at this unit, a few can shoot at that unit, a few can shoot at that. And I just got a little bit of sorcerer's prowess, blew up one of the trucks, got a couple of angles, picked up some of the mega knobs, and like killed 15 troops in one unit, 15 in another, a couple of grots, and ended up just getting 4 on the primary. He got his 12. One more turn, similar kind of thing happened. He got his 12, I got my 4. And then after that, the flamers came in, everything just died, and he ended up like getting less than kind of I had in my head, because I didn't realize just how quickly the orcs die once the vehicles
Yeah,
are
and he had
lost.
spent the WAG already, right? So he didn't have access to the 5-up and vulnerable when the flamers came down, was it?
Yeah. The flamers really went in on turn 3. Actually, no, he did have Wa up on that turn.
6-up
Uh,
though, not the 5-up. Is it?
Yeah, it was a 5-up in one, I think,
Oh,
on
okay,
the
sorry.
first turn of the war. So yeah, he did have it up, but they were mostly shooting vehicles and things, and
I see.
yeah, the 5-up save isn't going to save you from this volume of fire.
Yeah.
So yeah, Brian, I had a great game. He was a gentleman, even though we're playing almost up to 11 o'clock here,
Yeah.
and we had a great laugh, and yeah, managed to take the win.
Managed to take it. Got the W.
Yeah,
Fireside 40k going undefeated. Vic, absolutely crushing it again. We're gonna have to call this episode "Vic crushes Leicester," and I'm like, you're 2-0 against me on his title, man.
No,
We should have
man.
started this podcast at the beginning of the year.
You smashed it as well. I think we had a great time, and we'll probably maybe on the next episode touch on what our direction is going forward. But we're coming up to the Christmas break now. It's a bit of a quiet time.
Coming up to the Christmas break, but we have 2 more Super Majors left. I think in the rotation we've got Nottingham, and then the big LVO. So Vic, you're obviously ranked 1 in the world right now. You've got quite a points lead as well. I think it's going to be interesting, these last 2 events. I think, once again, despite how much the Yanks are talking about, oh, the UK's got so many events, which we do, of course, because we're great. It still feels like the position where LVO could settle it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. LVO settles it for, I think, everyone in the top 5 of the ITC.
Crazy, right?
I know you're ranked
we would
number
have played
4, number 3, number 4, number 4.
Yeah, number 4 at the moment. We would have played. I think someone's got like 1 point on me. Something. We would have played all of the UK TC majors and LGT, and then we would have gone to LVO, and still it's going to get decided at LVO, despite the Americans not coming over here to play LGT, right?
Yeah, because they have really long round events as well with the Games Workshop events. So yeah, it's going to be a nail biter of a finish. It's still up for grabs from any of us, man.
Should be good. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to. What are you looking forward to over the next event?
So I'm going on holiday to India for a few weeks, literally up until the week before the event. So I have no idea what I'm just gonna kind of wing it. What's it? Astra Militarum are they allowed for Nottingham?
I think they are allowed.
They
I
are.
don't know which models are going to be out, but that's something I'm looking at as well.
Yeah, I mean, if Astra Militarum are out, they're going to be a strong presence to consider. But obviously, I'm not going to have the modeling time to get that ready. So we'll see. We'll also see if the Flamer nerf exists at that point.
If it does. And look, I think Vic and I, you and I both agree that if Flamers get nerfed to a point where they're unplayable, so in a hypothetical situation, completely unplayable on the points, I still think the 1,000 Suns each list will be strong. Won't be as strong, but I still think it'd be a strong list.
I think it'll be very good. You still have to tech into demons, though. That's the thing.
For sure.
Because you need the Tzeentch demon powers for this list to work.
Definitely.
So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what other archetypes and whether they're competitive enough come out.
I think there's still a little bit in the Tzeentch list that hasn't really been looked into. I think there's still a bit of depth there.
Absolutely. There definitely is.
Nice. Well, there we go. Vic the champ, taking down Leicester Super Major, number 1 in the ITC, and my good friend. We're killing it. Dude, nothing would make me happier than for one of us to win the ITC overall. Then we can bag. Nothing would make me happier than for us, as I told you earlier, to be 1 and 2. Whoever it is.
Would be great. But we just got to roll with the punches, man. See how it all ends up. And I hope all you listeners who've still with us at this point have enjoyed this episode. We've gone in quite in depth to a high volume of games. If you like the content, let us know. Leave us a like. Leave us comments about what you'd like to see more of, or what you didn't like, or what you did like. And we'll catch you next time at the Fireside.
Thank you for listening to the 40k Fireside podcast. Vic and I hope you've enjoyed listening, and we greatly appreciate any feedback that you can provide after the show.